Ben Stone, the Executive Director of the Sonoma County Economic Development Board. Hello, Ben.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Good to see you again.
Great to be here.
You've been with the EDB, the Economic Development Board, coming on 30 years now, right? You got here in 1986. What brought you to Sonoma County, and what kept you here?
Well, I grew up in the Northwest in Seattle, and I was down here with my previous job in late September, about this time of year.
Yeah.
And the vineyards were so beautiful, and the people you meet in the Northwest from California are usually from LA and saying how glad they are to be out of it.
Right.
And when I drove around, I thought, wow, this is really beautiful. We never hear about this, because I suppose nobody goes up to the Northwest. They all stay down here. So I thought, I wonder if there's any jobs available. I was perfectly happy where I was, but this was, so I looked at this and saw it in the paper, just kind of random, and applied, and eventually ended up here.
So it was really the county first. Just it wasn't like you were following a career path. It's more like you followed the wine path.
It was probably a little of both,
Yeah.
but it was a nice place to be in economic development, as and yeah.
Especially in that era, because it was still sort of an amorphous thing. Like wine country hadn't really become one of our primary identities, and the telecom phenomena hadn't yet really happened. I think the groundwork was certainly being laid, but you've been part of and you've helped steer a lot of what Sonoma County has become in recent years.
Probably at least help support. Yeah.
Well, I think you've made a huge contribution.
The private sector really has led a lot of all those efforts, but yeah, it's really transformed in 30 years. I think from mainly being a lot of real estate and construction. Obviously, there are more local retail.
Right.
Rosenberg's downtown. Sebastopol had its own department store. I think it was Carson's.
Right.
And so did Petaluma. Had there were all these little retail stores. They're all gone now. And
what do you think that is? Is that just sort of part of the natural evolution of retail in small towns, where we see bigger box stores come in and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's just been it's been a national trend.
Yeah.
And now they're going to be replaced in some ways by Amazon, and now you can go to those stores to pick it up, but you've done all the work over the internet.
Yeah.
So the retail keeps changing, distribution keeps changing.
Is that one of your mandates, though, to help the small guys sort of get rooted here and launch here and survive? Or?
Yes, I think it was one of the first things we started was this ag marketing program. We had 21 different ag commodity groups sit down together and look at ways they could market their products collaboratively. And at the time, it was a task force. We had the school cooks come in, and why didn't they buy Sebastopol apples?
Yeah.
And they said, oh, it's just too much trouble, and we never, it's easier to get them bulk shipped from Washington State. And likewise with meats and so forth, we had John Ash come in, I remember, and he said, well, we buy our lamb from New Zealand simply because it comes pre-cut, all ready to go.
Yeah.
Whereas local lamb isn't there. So part of it was to get the lamb growers, so to speak, to adjust to the new markets that were out there, and then to create awareness in the restaurants and the schools to buy local.
And then this trend also occurred sort of organically, so to speak, where local produce and local agriculture in general has really become super vogue. I mean, it's the locavore movement.
Yes,
did you invent the locavore movement?
I wish I could say that, no. But I think it did we're one of the we're the first county to do this type of thing. We had this federal grant, went on for about 3 or 4 years to promote this. And I think the group felt they'd run their course when they got a lot of restaurants were featuring Sonoma County on their menus.
Right.
They were able to get into stores in San Francisco, so they felt they'd probably taken it as far as they could at the time.
So going back to 1986 and looking forward to 2016, that 30-year stretch, it seems that Sonoma County has, I think about this quite a bit in terms of its own branding. I think Sonoma County has really become a national, if not international, premise unto itself. It's not just this rural, suburb of San Francisco. Sonoma County in capital letters is a thing.
Yes, I think you're right. It's really transformed. I think the tourism efforts have really led to Sonoma County being much more aware. They've got, I think, a $7 million budget now, a lot of promotion around the country.
Yeah.
And now they're working around the world to put Sonoma County on the map. A few years ago, the wineries all agreed to use an appellation, even if it's grown in X Valley.
Right.
They've all agreed to put from Sonoma County on the wine.
Which is great. That's
a huge, that's on a dinner table around the world. People think about what is Sonoma County,
right.
And then they see the tourism message. So I think it's been an evolution, but it is certainly, we're very prominent now.
And you were instrumental in creating the bureau, were you not? The tourism bureau, or you helped?
Yes, it was a highly dysfunctional situation with all the different. There were a number of different tourism efforts, so we were given the opportunity to try and rationalize that, and it had some dynamics as we went into it, but I think it's evolved beautifully over the last 10 or 15 years.
Now, there's always this notion of the business improvement areas and the BIA and then the transitory occupancy tax, right? And there's always some controversies over where those monies can go. So Sonoma County tourism benefits by being in a business, or benefits with cities that are in the BIA, the business improvement areas, and so they're in part, the Bureau is subsidized by those monies, right? But some places like Sonoma and Healdsburg elect not to participate, right? How do we get our arms around like a consolidated presentation of Sonoma County versus these sort of fiefdoms that arise?
Well, I think even those two, though, have come along and want to they participate more actively in the Bureau. So. Again, it's incremental progress. When we took over, why there were 9 separate functions, plus a convention bureau. So we had 10 groups straddling things, and I think Healdsburg and Sonoma wanted to be totally separate, but now they've wanted to join in affiliation with the bureau. So I think there's nothing like it else in the country where we have a countywide tourism program supported both by BIA and TOT, and all the cities participate, some more than others, but they're all affiliated with it. So it's pretty unique. You don't see that around the country.
No, it is unique. Well, let's come back and talk about more of the future of Sonoma County. We're with Ben Stone, the Executive Director of the Sonoma County Economic Development Board. Right back.
You think getting dumped by text is harsh? Try getting dumped by a tennis ball. My ex-owner drove me out to the woods, yelled fetch, and by the time I brought the ball back, he was gone. Yeah, I was pissed. But the folks at the shelter helped me let go of my anger. I learned coping skills, like taking it to the hole. Boom! Now I'm ready to fetch again. But how about I throw and you run and get it?
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
We're with Ben Stone, the Executive Director of the Sonoma County Economic Development Board. We were talking about tourism and how Ben was instrumental in helping coalesce the various boards into sort of a unique and in forward-moving vision. But we're also talking about how these different fiefdoms have come together. You know, where you came from in Seattle and what you were doing there, how did that give you the perspective that you've been utilizing here in Sonoma County?
That's a good point. I think, you know, when I was in high school, Boeing was going through real problems, and there was a billboard up on the I-5 that said, well, the last person leaving Seattle, ... please turn out the lights. And it was a very, you know, people were leaving. This unemployment in the state was 17%.
Wow.
Twice as high as it was here during the depths of the recession, almost, you know, roughly. And so it was, I just knew a lot of people, their parents were losing their jobs. It was just a really, and so it made me curious, why is this, you know, what causes this, and how can you prevent this from happening? And so that really got me interested in high school, and then into college. I was in student government and econ and history, just trying to look at that. And then I went to grad school, got a master's in public administration.
Wow.
And worked with the county as an intern with the county executive during that period.
And
got to see things, you know.
And you also became an exchange student.
I was an exchange student in England in high school, and that was also very memorable for just, because England was declining. It was definitely, they were seeing their, why was that happening? What was going on? I wanted to understand that. So economics and public policy really
Yeah. Were we in the
animated
70s?
me. This was 70s. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's a really interesting kind of period to come up, and it's also interesting how it sunk into you, because I understand that you once took a test to see what your aptitude might be career-wise when you're a teenager, and it was president of the Chamber of Commerce.
Why? I don't know. How'd you find that out?
My producer John is really.
Oh boy, you guys don't miss a trick, do you?
Yes,
that's true, and I of course forgot all about it. When you're in high school, but it's kind of uncanny how we're kind of a countywide chamber in many ways.
Yeah, I mean it's really kind of predicted,
Yeah,
but
it's amazing.
But the fact that you've had this, if I can say, passion, or at least a deep interest in these issues, and your career's been devoted to it, and you've done it with aplomb, of course. And this is, that whole period, this is before Reagan, this is before Margaret Thatcher. You've seen a whole stretch of economic phenomena.
Yes,
Yeah.
the world is, and the globalization
Right.
that's gone on. Now we're seeing automation through computers and the internet in ways no one would have. We're seeing, if kids used to read books when they're waiting for their fathers, now they're watching internet movies.
Yeah, I got one over here doing it right now.
Yeah, and so I mean that's so book publishing's transforming, and obviously book publishers and distributors like Amazon have come to the fore, and others are having to reconfigure their operations.
In terms of disruptive technologies like that and disruptive business practices, what have you seen in Sonoma County that's been disrupted, positively or negatively?
Well, one thing I think with your background, Daedalus, is films.
Right.
When the Birds was shot here,
Right.
they were probably here for several months. Probably had a crew with 100 rooms, and great for the hotel world. And now the Tourism Bureau has much less interest in it because most of the shots are done either for a day. They come up and shoot a car commercial and they go.
Right.
But a lot of the movies are using special effects coming from companies in Marin like Industrial Light and Magic and George Lucas, and animation. And we see John Lasseter with his work.
Who is a Sonoman.
Who is a Sonoma resident,
Yeah.
yes. So movies have transformed. Some people find jobs, but it's different. So we have a film program, and but typically it's TV commercials coming up here for a day. It may be people doing stock photos or catalog shoots, so that still goes on.
And this
but
is
we don't see the big multi-month production up here with hundreds of people.
And that I remember that kind of eased off in the 90s, mid to late 90s.
Began to start changing.
And that's also exactly when the digital stuff started ramping up, so I can definitely see that. But but this brings me to you guys run what is essentially our film commission, right? And you as the EDB. And it seems like one of your métiers is creating these task forces, these commissions, these groups of interested parties that can help make these things manifest. And one of them you just created is Creative Sonoma. And we've had Krista Madsen on, who's the director of that.
Yes, right.
Can you kind of tell us what that vision is?
Yes, well, the supervisors wanted to kind of take a fresh look at the arts industry here, and so we hired
as an industry,
and as the individual artist. So we went out and got a firm that was the best we could find in the nation.
Yeah.
They came in and they really found three components of the creative economy. One was the individual artist, which was traditionally part of arts commissions. Second, the nonprofit arts organizations, and third, and probably growing, is the company, the for-profit company, in a sense like John Lasseter's work with animation, simulation. And so that really was to bring those three components together through what the consultants recommended as Creative Sonoma. The Board of Supervisors adopted that and funded it with a good start. And then Kristen Madsen's been able to get supplemental funds, and I'm sure she'll do more of that, but very creatively. And the goal really is to help grow the creative economy here, which if you look at the world, the Chinese aren't doing much. The innovation is not one of their strengths. And so they buy our products. One of our biggest exports is film. The world loves our arts, our movies, all that, music. And so we're trying to foster that. Trying to foster that, helping the nonprofit arts organizations be more effective. We have, I think, 20 workshops this year for individual artists, how they can market better, how they can present themselves better, how they can get into hospitals, having exhibits at hospitals and so forth. So we're really trying to help all three aspects of that creative economy.
And so, is it like the third leg of the stool? So that in one vision, there's wine, tourism, and then arts, and then that is
Yes, and those, I think really, you're well put, really the arts can have we hope over long term will have an image for people when they think of Sonoma County, they think of wine and tourism, they'll also think about coming here for the variety of arts, and it's just bringing that out.
Yeah.
Whether it's the for-profit side, but also the individual artists that we have here. Arts Trails does a lot, that
Right.
type of
It's huge.
thing.
Yeah.
And then also the nonprofit arts organizations, the Green Center, Wells Fargo, all those. I think I've read twice in the New York Times now. The Green Center's been in the front page or second page.
Yeah.
When you turn the page,
the arts section,
there's
yeah.
Sonoma County right there.
And then they interviewed a bunch of, or rather did reviews of restaurants in Petaluma recently.
Right.
in
Isn't
the
it
New York Times.
amazing?
It's huge, yeah.
So cultural tourism, tying the arts, the food, wine all together is a great way to keep the economy here in the forefront.
Yeah, but that's not just what we do, though. And I think in some ways, and it's great that the world is beginning to identify us as sort of an arts center like that. And I certainly vote for that, But what else do we do? What are our big industries here?
Well, obviously, tourism employs, and how you define big, but it employs 10% of our workforce.
Really?
Our biggest, around 20,000 people. Our biggest industry, believe it or not, is retail in terms of workforce. Around 30,000 people work in retail, which is kind of amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing.
It's also worrisome as the world changes into other types of purchasing.
Right.
That's a challenge to look ahead with. But obviously, agriculture and all its manifestations is big. The technology, while it's small in terms of number of employees and overall size, is very critical. It has very low impact environmentally in the county, but it has huge. A lot of the products we ship to China are technology related. Our local firms shipping products over there.
I didn't really, and actually manufacturing them here too.
Making them
Wow.
here.
We're talking with Ben Stone. He's the executive director of the Sonoma County Economic Development Board, and we'll be right back.
Hey, did you know 2.4 million loving cats and dogs in shelters and rescues need our help to find a home? Let's go to theshelterpetproject.org and meet if you are in a shelter near you. Harlow, she's one great listener and loves to hear all your stories. My kind of cat. Cerulo is a sweet, goofy boy who's eager to please. Sounds just like another dog I know. So go to theshelterpetproject.org, search your local shelters and rescues, and go for a cuddle with your next best friend. Adopt.
Can you help me with this? My new dad teaches me all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
He helps me with homework.
That would be 3.6795.
Thanks.
Yep.
He helps me with my decision making.
I wouldn't use this one. Ever.
And he's even teaching me how to drive.
And that's why cars have bumpers.
I'm learning so much.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are.
We're with Ben Stone, the executive director of Sonoma County's Economic Development Board.
It's a mouthful.
EDB, the EDB.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about sort of tourism and wine and all the things that happen in Sonoma County, and we just wrapped Restaurant Week.
Yes, we just got our report done. We found it grew by 20% this year. 25% of the people that took advantage of Restaurant Week came from outside the area, were tourists.
That's great.
We work very closely with the Tourism Bureau on this to bring in new money.
Yeah.
We do Restaurant Week during the off-season for restaurants, which in this area is mid-March, and it's kind of a quiet time. So it's a real boost. They reported they bought $100,000 more local ag food products because of Restaurant Week this year. So it's a great way to help the restaurants be successful, bring more tourists in, and really burnish our image as a great food and wine center.
That's fascinating, man. I didn't realize it's such a virtuous circle like that, because of course they're sourcing local food for Restaurant Week. That's local agriculture.
Right. We encourage them to feature local ag, local wine, and lately, local beer and craft beverages and all that, which is a whole new dynamic that's happening.
It definitely has shot up the last few
We
years.
now have, believe it or not, we have 40 craft beverage companies in Sonoma
serious?
County. And I'm probably, by the time this is shown, there'll be 42. We can't keep our map current. It's just constantly evolving.
What do you think accounts for all this entrepreneurism?
Well, part of it is technology that you can now have a distillery. You can buy them in a box almost. You can make your own wine. You can make your own beer, and now you can make your own distilled, gin or whiskey.
That's right.
So we're seeing again, tech has brought job changes that can be negative, but also positive. So now we have all these artisanal beverage companies making products, and you've seen some of them being phenomenal. Lagunitas, Russian River Brewing, Bear Republic are all national reputations.
In the Lagunitas situation, international now with the purchase.
Yes, right, that's right.
The
merger. And
what does that mean to you guys, though, as the EDB, when a local institution like Lagunitas becomes so big that another entity like Heineken comes in, and now they're like this global company?
Well, you know, Heineken's bringing new investment. That's more money for Lagunitas. They can expand their operations, put money into R&D, come up with new products. Some of if they consolidate some things, people can spin off, or they're getting money and start their own craft beverage company of some sort. It keeps it's kind of a virtuous cycle.
A friend of mine pointed out that they are hiring all these C-level positions. Like suddenly, there's 20 more top-level jobs at Lagunitas. That's huge. You know.
And we're seeing that with Keysight when they became an independent technology company here, why they're bringing in C-level people from around the country to work there. So we're getting kind of a new group of sophisticated, talented infusion into Sonoma County.
And you're going to have Year of the Entrepreneur in 2016.
That's right. That's right. Daedalus, we have a task force planning that. And,
see, it's always a task force with you.
It is. Well, it's I think how you get acceptance from people around. Like we went out, sought members of the public to participate. We had a number of people apply, so we put together a very diverse group of about 10 or 15 that are planning this. They're going to have a calendar of entrepreneurial events during the year, looking at doing Startup Sonoma, the first startup conference.
That's great.
So all sorts of things to really, because entrepreneurs are our backbone here. The corporations come and go, but like Lagunitas, it's an entrepreneur. Tony McGee started that. Russian River Brewing, that's a couple that started their operation. So entrepreneurship is what makes Sonoma County distinct in many ways, and we need to do everything we can to keep it here and help it grow.
And on that, like speaking of growth, where do you think the biggest growth space is going to be coming up in the next few years?
In terms of
our development economically?
Well, I think several. One is we are going to form an ag business council to bring we have about 15 or 20 agricultural groups, all doing great things, but we brought them together for a meeting about 6 or 8 months ago, and they were so excited they'd never sat down together. So we're going to form this council. Likewise around outdoor rec, bring those, biking's really taken off. We're probably a world center for biking. So that aspect. So we see those outdoor rec and our ag and all of its manifestations. People are still going to want artisanal food, more and more of it. So anything we can do to support that, specialty wines is going to be important.
So if I was smart, I would start growing hops to hit the ag part. I would brew the beer, so to have that commodity, and then I would make it available as a beer stand that bicyclists could ride by and grab a brew, right?
Daedalus, you're such an entrepreneur.
Write this down.
You're one step ahead.
Like, with the Year of the Entrepreneur, there's going to be, in Startup Sonoma, there's going to be a lot of attention paid to that, and I think we're going to see a lot of activity as a result of people launching new businesses. And I'm just wondering, they should know where's the safe bets, or maybe where
can't say safe bets, but I think promising bets really play off. I think right now we're seeing the tourism people are the Airbnbs coming along. People want to live in these small. They want to be in small houses now when some people want to recreate. So we're seeing a whole evolution with Airbnb has created a whole new type of business, which wasn't there 3 years ago, 5 years ago.
I know, this disruption is amazing.
And those people are all becoming entrepreneurs. They're renting out their properties.
That's true.
And so there's a whole new aspect.
How do you feel about like Uber and Airbnb?
They're just other options. I think they're going to happen. There's nothing can be done. If people don't like them, to stop them, probably. You can't prohibit them. I think you want to work with them so they're responsible. I think they're going to be paying taxes. They've agreed to pay the TOT taxes. We have an option now for Uber. It's called Blink Car. A local couple has come up with that as an entrepreneurial way to help people get around.
See, that's interesting. So there are these technologies that enable like individual players to jump into the economy and become entrepreneurs. But when is Sonoma County going to create its own app or own entity like an Uber or Airbnb to enable entrepreneurs worldwide? Kind of reverse the model. So instead of us using their tech, let's make the tech for the world to use.
Well, that's something we see obviously between the junior college and Sonoma State. I think some of the people at places like Keysight, as they spin out, products will develop. As I mentioned, why Pure Luxury Limousines come up with Blink Car as their own.
Oh, that's them. Okay.
They're doing their own version of. It's more complex, but in a shorthand, it's kind of like Uber.
That's great.
So we're seeing that already, I think. And again, it's all this freedom that people have to create apps just creates people will be coming up with more here, I think.
Yeah. I mean, is it good for our local economy to have a bunch of individual operators like that, or would it be great to have a Pixar arrive here and set up shop?
I don't know that it's either or. I think it's
Yeah.
good to have both. The local entrepreneurs are probably going to stay here. They're rooted here.
Right.
Big companies can come and go. We've seen that.
Right.
Probably will again. However, the medium and large companies bring that. Look at the gift we've had here from Agilent, Hewlett Packard, now Keysight.
Right.
The talent they brought in here. Many of those people went off to spin and start off their own operations.
Yeah.
Likewise with Ockley, which was kind of locally owned, but people left there over time. And
My dad worked there.
did he?
Yep.
Well, and
Yeah.
they start their own business or sidelines.
Yeah.
So big companies bring a lot of talent into an area. The small companies, probably people will stay and invest in the area, and hopefully their kids take over, and
Right.
It just keeps growing.
Well, I'm so glad to have, I met you, I think 10 years ago when I came
Yes,
out to
when
Los
you came
Angeles.
back, first came back,
when
yeah,
I
yeah.
repatriated, and it's just changed so much, and largely for the better the entire time.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
Ben Stone, the Executive Director of the Sonoma County Economic Development Board. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks,
We'll
Steve.
have you
It's
back.
always a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thanks
likewise.
again.
Yeah, yeah.